Forum Communications, the producer of this fine podcast, has been publishing and supporting local news across the Midwest for over 100 years, and they have named this week Trust Week. It's a week highlighting all that goes into covering local news to ensure we keep your trust. Local news is one of the best ways to stay connected to your community, so during Trust Week, you can get 50% off a new annual subscription to Duluth News Tribune. Just visit duluthnewstribune.news/half-off to get this special offer. That's duluthnewstribune.news/half-off to get 50% off local news from local reporters. Hello Northlanders, it's Thursday, April 6th. I'm Wyatt Buckner with your Duluth News Tribune Minute, presented by Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union.
The average MPECU member saves over $785 a year in better rates and lower fees. And with MPECU, every ATM is your ATM. With their free checking program, you get ATM fee reimbursements at any ATM anywhere in the U.S. Check out Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union services online at mpecu.com or visit their offices in downtown Duluth, Arrowhead Road, or Miller Trunk Highway.
Now here's a look at today's headlines. Northeastern Minnesota's deer are entering a critical period, a live or die time of year as they wait for deep snow to melt and something green to eat to sprout in the woods. Some of them will likely die waiting. The Winter Severity Index used by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources already has reached the severe category for large swaths of Carleton, St. Louis, Lake, and Cook counties, where winter impacts are likely to increase deer mortality above the usual 10%. As the News Tribune noted in early March, the biggest culprit of winter is deep snow. Deer can withstand cold just fine if they can move around easily to find shelter and food and escape wolves. But in some areas, deer have been wading through 3 feet or more of snow for most of the winter. And it's not just deer that die outright that continues to keep the Arrowhead region deer herd down. Female deer that survive winter in severe areas are likely to give birth to just one fawn, or none at all, instead of the usual twins, a factor that will hold the regional population down for years to come. While a melty March can often bring relief to the northern deer herd, this year it was crueler than most, with ongoing snow and cold. Deer really won't start to recover until green-up occurs in the woods. As the snowpack melts a little and then refreezes each night, a hard crust forms that allows wolves and other predators to run on top while deer often still punch through, making deer even more susceptible to predation. All of this will mean continued and even expanded bucks-only deer hunting this fall with likely reduced antlerless permits in other areas. The good news is that deer numbers can rebound fast if given a string of several mild or even normal winters in a row. That happened after several brutal winters in the 1990s, when a string of very mild winters in the early 2000s led to all-time record high deer numbers, even as wolves also thrived. A long-sought passenger rail line between Duluth and the Twin Cities still appears closer than ever to reality this year, with both the House and Senate versions of a transportation budget including funding for the service. Advocates of the Northern Lights Express Rail project, who have been pushing for years to restore Twin Cities Duluth passenger rail travel, still say this year is the closest the state has come to funding the line. Estimates have placed the price tag of NLX at $450 million, but Minnesota would only have to chip in 20% of the total, as the federal government would pay $4 for every $1 from the state. As DFL lawmakers prepare their major budget bills, both the Senate and House transportation packages, or omnibus bills, contain funding for NLX. But there's a key difference between the proposals. The House version calls for $194 million to get the line started, whereas the Senate version calls for $50 million. The amount in the current Senate proposal would fall short of what's needed to get the matching federal funds to support the full cost of NLX. Meanwhile, the $194 million would unlock nearly $1 billion, far more than the estimated cost of the project. Earlier this year, Senate and House DFLers introduced bills calling for $99 million for the line, though Minnesota tends to pass budget bills as larger packages. NLX Alliance, a coalition of groups along the route, said legislators want to take advantage of federal passenger rail funding and called the line a key link in a Midwestern passenger rail network. A Senate DFL spokesman said there's a commitment in both chambers to get NLX funded, and while there's a discrepancy in funding now, it'll get hammered out later on in the session in a conference committee between the House and Senate. NLX would use 152 miles of existing BNSF railway track and connect Target Field in downtown Minneapolis to the St. Louis County Depot in Duluth. Stops are planned in Coon Rapids, Cambridge, Hinckley, and Superior. For a preview of an upcoming story, Dan Williamson joins us with a special guest.
Thanks, Wyatt. I'm joined by one of our colleagues, Duluth News Tribune features reporter Melinda Levine. We're speaking over Zoom. And Melinda, there's a story you're working on that we'll be able to see online on Friday at duluthnewstribune.com. And an interesting story. This involves a chance sighting that led to an artist helping another artist. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, and Dan, I would even say a chance sighting leading to another chance sighting. So when Lisa Perrin Cosmo spotted a wildlife photo online, she knew it was something special. She said, quote, "I don't think I'd ever get a shot like that," end quote. She messaged cloquet photographer Dewey Dupas Sr., and he quickly gave her permission to use as a painting reference his photo of a striking male moose in the Northwoods on a colorful autumn day. In March, her painting, which she titled In the Light, based on Dupas's photo, won Best in Show against artists across the globe in an art competition.
What was your biggest takeaway from the story, Melinda?
My biggest takeaway was hearing about, this cloquet photographer's encounter with the moose. He was like, the moose came 25 feet away from me. And I was like, what? Hearing how nature inspires artists and artist inspires another artist was just really cool.
Is there something in particular you hope our audience takes away from this story?
I hope our audience can, tap into how our Northland community is so supportive of each other. Like Lisa Perrin Cosmo lives in Two Harbors, and Dewey Dupas Sr. lives in Cloquet, and they were just so open to working together. And like they haven't met in person, but hearing Dupas's response to seeing the painting that he created from his photograph was so cool. The painting is on display at Tulin's Gallery and Boutique in Duluth, and if it sells, Perrin Cosmo said she'll toss some of the sale money to Dupas. And I think that that's really cool.
That is cool. Melinda, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dan.
And again, you can find that story online on Friday at duluthnewstribune.com. Wyatt, back to you.
Thanks, Dan. Now here's a look at your forecast, brought to you by the News Tribune's Northlandia podcast.
Weather for the Duluth area today, mostly cloudy and breezy with a light chance of snow showers. Temperatures in the mid-30s today, dropping down into the mid-teens tonight, but clouds clearing out, and by the time we get into Friday, still breezy but with sunshine. Temperatures back into the mid-30s. Warmer this weekend, 40s for Saturday, and then getting up into the 50s by Sunday. I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist Robert Pointer.
Thank you to the Northlandia podcast for their support. The weekly podcast explores curious and unique stories here in the Northland. Each episode celebrates the region's distinctive people, places, and history. You can find all the episodes of Northlandia at duluthnewstribune.com or wherever you also get this podcast. Reporting for today's episode was done by John Myers and Alex DeRozier. Thank you for listening to Duluth News Tribune Minute. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.